Welcome to the Daikaiju Network podcast commentary on 1968's Destroy All Monsters. I am your co-host Kent, and with me is your other
Jason, what's
co-host.
going on, everyone?
All right, so this is a film that obviously anyone who is remotely involved with the fandom on any level understands that this is one of the more popular Godzilla films, and so we just haven't covered it yet for a commentary, and so that's kind of what we're deciding to do today. A little bit of housekeeping. This will be our last podcast until the week of July 5th, and we're going to hold some panels during that week. We're still ironing out a few of the details, but yeah, we'll kind of have some more things ready. Excuse me, in the next week or so, leading up to that. But before we get going on the commentary, I guess we just kind of say a few brief things as far as our history of this movie and sort of what we've initially thought about it. So, Jason, do you want to go first?
Sure. When it comes to Destroy All Monsters, I think the last time that I actually watched this movie was probably a couple of years ago when the Blu-ray version of this movie came out. Um, and yeah, that was the last time I watched it. But after many years of actually having seen this movie and also discussing about it earlier on in our uh, podcast show and everything, it's a really good movie. And if it's like not only it just doesn't focus on all the monsters, even though there's a lot of monsters uh, in this movie, but it also focuses it sort of balances things out a little bit uh, with the human side of the story, and as well as with the aliens trying to take over the world, trying to control some of the monsters here and there, as well as humans, mind you. And it's it's a really good take of the whole Godzilla franchise. And originally, it was supposed to be the final film of the Godzilla franchise originally, but apparently they just kept on going. But uh, nevertheless, it's a really good, for me, anyways, a popcorn movie, and sort of get to see a lot of the great monsters that sort of haven't really interacted with one another, and just sort of see how they interact with one another. And yeah, it's it's a really good uh, movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, we revisited this
A couple
movie
times, yeah,
at some point last
yeah.
year, and I've said it numerous times throughout the course of our podcast, over 10 years of podcasting, that unfortunately for me, this film never. It never registered with me on the same level that it has with most fans. And I think there are a couple reasons for that. One reason is that I saw it at the age of 13, going on 14, so I was a bit older at the time. Whereas a lot of fans, especially those who were Boomer and Gen Xers, saw it when they were younger. And when you're younger, certain things tend to stick with you more for that nostalgia factor. So I don't really have that with this, because this movie, by and large, was sort of lost for a good while until it came out on VHS and DVD from ADV Films back in '98.
Hmm.
And so I think my age when I saw it, I think that had something to do with it. But at the same time, I think uh, definitely for me, one of the things that has made this film a bit underwhelming to me is that this film was hyped up so much throughout the course of my life before I saw it. I became a Godzilla fan in late 1992 at the age of 8, and I had read about the film in Ian Thorne's Godzilla book. Anybody who is old enough probably will remember that from the Crestwood House Monster
Oh
series, I
yeah.
believe it was. I have that book on my
I
shelf back
remember
here.
we
Um,
checked that book out many times during our like elementary school days because I think our elementary school at the time they had those particular books, if I remember.
they
Yeah.
had, I think, pretty much the entire
Mm-hmm.
collection. And then at the same time, I had kept hearing from a lot of people in the early days of the internet, um, on message boards and other sites where some of the earlier Godzilla fan sites reviewed the movies, that this was like the movie. And so I was hyped up for this. Still remember, I don't remember the exact store, but I remember when I saw this movie in a music type of store, not kind of a Sam Goody type
Suncoast.
of store.
Is that the one that you're talking about?
Was it Suncoast?
I know we.
I don't think that was the store that we found this in.
I would have to say it would have to be Suncoast because
It was in Mall of America. I do remember that. Um, but I remember when I saw this, I'm like, Jason, look, it's just destroy all monsters. And we're just like, oh. And so we brought it home and we watched it. And I actually found myself to be kind of disappointed in the film for a number of reasons. Well, one of the things is that I just don't think that the kaiju action is as prominent as sort of as advertised, not just through the trailer, but through the book and through other people whom I had read that discussed this film. And the fact too, I just think I thought the story is pretty basic, despite the fact that we have some good actors in this movie. I thought a lot of their characters are dull. Um, and I still, by and large, think that way. So I don't hate this movie, but I don't think it's some sort of masterpiece either. I will give it props on technical aspects, but by and large, I think this movie is okay. It's, to me, it's a middle of the road type of film. So yeah. So we're going to go ahead and do the commentary. Anyone who is not familiar with how we do the commentaries here, I go 3, 2, 1, go. And when I say go, we hit the play button on whichever device you happen to be using to watch this movie with us. So are you
yeah,
ready?
it just went back to the home menu of the Blu-ray player for me, so I had to get everything all set up again, annoyingly.
All right. So ready?
Yep.
All right. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so like I was telling Jason earlier, I am watching this movie the via the Tokyo Shock Media Blasters Blu-ray, and I had thought that this version of the film also had the Titradub, which was commissioned by AIP back in the day,
Mhm.
and I found out that's not the case. So only my one DVD has the Titradub on it. And I said it before when we revisited this film at some point last year that I've seen this movie with the Titradub a couple of times, and one of them was with that review. And um, and so I was trying to compare because the first time I heard this Titradub, I was not all that impressed. And again, too, this is one of those things where I've read in several books and even online from many people who grew up watching this film with that Titradub, that was like a great dub. That was the superior dub. Whereas the one that came out on ADV was an international dub done in
Mhm.
Japan. And so when I first heard the Titradub, I was not impressed with it. And I think part of that, as I said before on that previous review, that first of all, I grew up with the international dub, so that's kind of the dub I'm used to. So I think there's sort of a built-in bias with me on that front. Second of all, I thought some of the dialogue changes or differences between the two, which aren't many, but they're noticeable if you're familiar with each dub. I thought some of the differences with the Titra dub were not great changes with the dialogue. And at the same time, I just thought the actual performances, the inflections in voices and what have you, I wasn't too keen on the representations of the individual characters with that particular dub. And so when we revisited the film last year, I thought, okay, I'm going to watch this once with the international dub, and then I'll do it with the Titra dub. And so I did that. And I still walked away. I'm like, I actually walked away disliking the Titra dub even more because I saw them relatively close to each other. And I just thought to myself, no, I don't like it. And like I said, part of it, I think, with me is there's a built-in bias because I've been so used to that international dub. And I'm not saying the international dub is great. It really isn't. But I think when I've compared the two, I think the international dub does a bit better in terms of the minor dialogue changes. And I think even the voice actors, quite honestly, do a bit better job in terms of really embodying their respective characters as well. And quite frankly, out of all the AIP Titra dubs that I've heard of the various Godzilla films, I found that particular Titra dub of Destroy All Monsters to really be the weakest. I was very surprised at, in my opinion, how weak that particular dub was because, you get like Mothra versus Godzilla and even Godzilla versus Monster Zero. Like, in my opinion, those are some of the greatest dubs, not just in the Godzilla franchise, but in the entire genre, quite honestly. And I just was very disappointed in the representation we got with Destroy All Monsters.
And on this Blu-ray that I have, which I'm probably guessing that you have, I think you'll like at least like this. But I have the subtitles going on right now since I have the volume down low. But the subtitle format, nice, thick, bold, yellow fonts.
I do like that. Let me quickly see what it is on mine here for a second. Let's see, subtitle. I gotta wait for text to come up. Someone talk. Not you, Godzilla. Doo-dee-doo-dee-doo.
And I think this was the first movie with that particular.
Yep, big bold yellow.
I think this was the first movie with this particular Godzilla suit. Am I right?
This is, yes.
Yeah, because when he was heading back to land there, it already looked like it was sort of falling apart because like you saw a short shot, like a part of the arm, just back of his arm above the elbow there looked like some of that texture was sort of missing.
I guess I didn't see that. I'll have to look at it again next time. But yeah, like you bring up, the suit. The Godzilla suit is new for the first time for the franchise, and this suit would be reused 3 more times. Rodan got a facelift, so did King Ghidorah.
Although I'm not quite impressed with the whole Rodan sort of appearance, mainly the face part.
I'm not either. Especially in the face.
It's like his
That's
beak,
where I have
it's
the
like his
biggest
beak
problem.
is really downwards instead of more straightforward.
Yes. Yeah. The Minya suit is the same one from the previous movie, Son of Godzilla. I believe both, definitely the Kumonga suit is the same thing from the last one as well. There's Susumu Kurobe, who plays Ultraman, and Hayata in the original Ultraman.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
And then The Gorosaurus suit is the same one from the previous year's King Kong Escapes. Um, Anguirus is a whole new suit. In fact, this is Anguirus' first appearance since Godzilla Raids Again in '55.
That doesn't
Um,
seem like it.
well, I know, but it is. Um, Varan is in the film, but because the suit was deteriorated, and due to the budget, even though the budget for this film was more than the previous two films, they just didn't have enough money to do a whole new Varan suit. So you have a marionette, and that's why Varan's only in like 2 quick shots in this
Mhm.
film. Um, and everybody who is familiar with this movie knows the faux pas that happens when the newscaster later on says Paris is leveled by Baragon. Well, no, it's Gorosaurus.
Right.
And that's not a problem with the dub. In fact, even in the Japanese script, yes, they didn't even bother changing it. They still used Baragon. And the reason why Baragon is hardly ever used in this film is due to the fact that that particular suit was used extensively in a lot of Subaraya productions of the Ultraman TV series
Oh
going
yeah,
on at this
definitely.
time.
Because there were at least a couple of monsters that I know from that show that they were using basically the majority of that entire suit, particularly one monster that I know, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I know that they've reused most of that.
Yeah, that's a stupid thing that they're doing here. Gas, hey, let's just open up the door.
It looks like dried mustard.
Mustard gas. Oh man, you talk about something that's deadly. This movie also marks the debut of Monsterland or Monster Island, something that would make a recurring appearance in a number of the movies to follow. Well, a sort of, I think, a common misconception about this film is that this was Subaraya's final film. And in a way, that's true. However, he still wasn't as active um, in the production of this film because his health was declining and declining rapidly. And yeah, he kind of supervised it, but by and large, it was Sadamasa Arikawa who did a bulk of the effects work. And I believe, in my opinion, this is just a theory and I really can't back it up, but I truly believe that part of the problem that I have with this film, which is some of the kaiju action, in some cases the lack of kaiju action, um, I do believe part of that is due to the fact that Subaraya really wasn't as wholly involved with this film. And I think Arikawa and his crew maybe were a bit more hesitant to do certain types of footage. Now, granted, budget plays a part in that too to some degree, but I still, in my heart of hearts, have this theory that with Subaraya kind of being absent for the most part, that maybe there just wasn't the sort of confidence on set to really do more extensive and comprehensive effects work. But that's, again, just a theory of mine.
Hmm.
And like I had talked about here a moment ago, that this film was given a slightly higher budget than the previous two films. And as Jason had said at the top of this podcast, this initially was supposed to be the final Godzilla film. This final few films had not been doing well in terms of ticket sales and therefore, of course, as revenue. And this film was supposed to lay Godzilla to rest for quite a while. And this movie did only slightly better than Son of Godzilla. Son of Godzilla sold 2.5 million tickets. Destroy All Monsters sold 2.6 million.
Wow.
Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, if I remember correctly, did even a bit better than this film.
Jeez. Yeah, and the dub here or the subtitles here it just said subterranean monster. But yeah, it's like when we talked about uh, the Rodan appearance, where he, at least in the shots where he was flying around Moscow, that his beak was more straightforward instead of more
The
down. Yeah.
marionette, yeah. It's still unfortunate that given the fact that, um, this film is given a slightly higher budget, it's still unfortunate that some of the effects work in various parts of this film still just isn't great. And again, I don't blame Arikawa and his crew on that. I do blame budget for that as well. It's just it's really unfortunate because for a film that has 11 monsters in it, again, I truly feel like this film doesn't do a good enough job of not just giving each kaiju a moment, although a few of them do get their moments, obviously, but most of them don't. And the fact, too, that I'm just not as fully impressed with the kaiju action in this film. Sure, like at the end of the film, when we have all 11 kaiju there battling King Ghidorah, I think from a technical standpoint, it's well done because you have all these monsters, you have X amount of guys in suits, but then you have X amount of guys in the rafters controlling like the wings of Ghidorah, controlling Rodan, controlling the marionettes of Kumonga and Mothra and the like. So from a technical standpoint, it's impressive, but from an execution standpoint, in terms of what we get, it's not that
Mm-hmm.
impressive because once Ghidra lands and the monsters gang up on him, that's
Mm-hmm.
it. I mean, Ghidra's toast. So that was one of the things I was always deeply disappointed about in this movie as well, is that yeah, I mean, Ghidra is going to be outnumbered. He's going to get his butt kicked. But the moment he lands, that's it. And it's not much of an interesting climax, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's. I think. Yeah, they probably should have planned it out more just to make it. Even though that you have all these monsters, and it's like, oh, it'll just be like whatever you mentioned that he'll get his ass whooped. But you would think that they would at least try to show the true power of King Ghidorah at least for a little bit in the final battle of Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah. Um, and this script was written by Takeshi Kimura. It was his first kaiju film in a while because basically Shinichi Sekizawa wrote every Godzilla script from King Kong versus Godzilla up to Son of Godzilla. And I guess there had been some tensions between Honda and Sekizawa as far as the representations of the kaiju. Um, Sekizawa, I think, wanted a more lighter hearted approach to the kaiju action, while Honda wanted to be a bit more serious with it. And so Kimura came in and did the script for this particular film. And I've always, occasionally, I've called this movie Monster Zero Light, meaning that really when you watch this film and you pay attention to it, just the general um, plot points, it's very much a carbon copy of Monster Zero.
Yeah, a
You
little bit,
have
yeah.
you have space expeditions, you have an alien race using mind control on the monsters, and they're using that obviously to invade the Earth and to destroy Earth cities. Um, it's it's very much in the scope of Monster Zero. The unfortunate aspect, again, with this film is that the story is very thin, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a popcorn film, but it sort of takes away, sadly, some of the stakes of the film because it's not fully fleshed out. The characters are incredibly one dimensional, and even with good actors like Akira Kubo, Jun Tazaki, and the like, even as good as those actors are, they still aren't able to make these characters as interesting as they should be. And that's very unfortunate here. And I don't care much for shoot, what's his girlfriend's name in this film? Um,
Let's
what's her
find
name?
out here.
Yeah, actually, hold on a second here.
For some reason, I always keep wanting to type Destroya instead of Destroy. Cast.
Kyoto. Kyoto, played by
Yep.
Yukiko Kobayashi. She plays very submissive role once she gets the earrings pulled from her ears later on in the film.
Speaking of
And I find
pulling the earrings off, it's like I always just kind of cringe a little bit, or just like every time when that
yeah,
earring
I mean, I
gets
did
pulled
the
off.
first few times I saw the movie. Now I'm just like, eh. But the thing is that I have a bit of a problem with that because Kyoto, right now, as she's under the key lock spell, is a very powerful character. In fact, she's more interesting this way than when she is later. She just becomes this quiet, submissive woman later on and basically is relegated to the sidelines after that. And it just kind of like, come on, Honda, like, you're better than this. You usually have some pretty strong female characters in a number of your films. And here, once she's out from under the key lock spell, she just, she more or less kind of disappears, so to speak, from the film. And that's pretty disappointing. Yoshio Tsuchiya here. Tsuchiya always loved playing very interesting characters, especially aliens. He was the controller of Planet X for Monster Zero, and of course here he plays a doctor on Ogasawara Island who's now under the control of the Keylocks.
Yeah, sometimes.
Kenji Sahara also is in the film, but he's relegated to a very minor part in this film.
As far as Yoshio in this film, he sort of kind of reminds me of his character. I think it's sort of kind of this a little bit of the same character that he portrayed in Matango, but of course more. I would say more of a sophisticated, but and also not psychotic when he goes towards the end of his character's role in Matango.
I look at his role here, his portrayal, and it reminds me more of his role in Battle in Outer Space when he's under alien control in that film as well.
Yeah, I don't even think I've seen that film yet. If so, probably just a little bit.
I'm positive you probably have seen it.
Not the entirety, as far as I remember. And then when it comes to this whole key lock setting here, it's sort of also reminds me of Super Monster Camera with the setting with kind of the sheets and everything.
Yeah. Well, of course, that stuff comes through more with the Blu-ray than it does on VHS or DVD. Um, the Keylock are interesting. It's basically an all-female race of
Mm-hmm.
aliens. Japanese John Wayne trying to solve everything with the pistol.
All right, let's try that on you.
Do you think your skull will stop this bullet?
If it is a bullet with those kinds of guns.
Question: is my gun loaded or not loaded?
Question, is my gun a gun?
Or is it an ice cream cone?
Or is it just one of those air duster blower things? Or a squirt gun. Like a really heavy duty squirt gun. Watch out, or else I'll shove you with my gun off the side.
This is a movie that I've seen quite a few times in like the 22 years that I've had it. And like, even though I'm not a huge fan of the film, I watch it frequently enough, and I think part of it is due to the fact that this film is held in such high regard within the fandom that I'm always, I think, trying to figure out, outside of nostalgia, why so many people love this film so much. Um, and I just have difficulty trying to sort of, um, I guess, see what so many others see in this film.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to put it on the commentary cam here.
We're having a gunfight. And action purposes. And one of the more funny, ridiculous moments of the film there. You get shot in the head.
By the way, since you're on YouTube there, just see if you can hear yourself since I've got the commentary cam on. Just want to double check.
Everything is very faint. I can't really. I don't know if I can make out myself, but when I hear you, it sounds very, very faint. I can hear myself now, but again, it still sounds faint.
You're faint.
I'm gonna faint. Oh. Funny thing is, I hear myself, but then I didn't hear you there.
Let's see here. I can hear myself.
I couldn't hear you, and like I said, everything sounds faint. Do you know what happens? Oh, well, you're a little too happy for that. Now I can hear you there.
Yeah, because I can hear you perfectly fine on YouTube there. But anywho, there goes Yoshio.
And a very ridiculous dummy being thrown out.
They're all of a sudden going James Bond on us.
This does remind me of a couple of the earlier James Bond movies. I need to revisit those. The last time I went through that series was late 2015 into early 2016.
Last time I watched a James Bond movie was that latest one. Yeah,
Spectre.
a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I went in an order of release because I bought the 50th anniversary DVD set, and I went in order.
I'm not even sure when the last time I saw some of those classic ones. Probably been a long time.
My favorite one is the fifth one, where I think it's called You Only Live Twice, I think it's called. It's the one where he's in Japan.
Gotcha.
And I think it's Akiko Wakabayashi is in that one.
I wonder how that new one's gonna... I wonder how that new one's gonna turn out.
Well, we'll find out whenever the pandemic's over.
It's like, I'm just gonna stab you even though you're dead.
I'm taking out a butter knife. It's like, well, good luck with that, I guess.
I'm gonna butter him up.
I can't believe he's not alive. Pew, 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 pew.
But yeah, it's like, now that I now know Hayata is in this movie more and more now, since diving in more to Ultraman, it's just sort of hard to see him playing as a villain.
He played a villain also in Ghidorah.
Yeah, it's just...
I think he's called like Mustachioed Man or whatever.
It's still just hard to see him play as a villain.
Nope.
I like how they just, yank that little BB-sized pellet radio
I like
device.
how they let Jun Tazaki and Akira Kubo in there, when they're not wearing scrubs and face masks. Yeah. I should go into like the local hospital. Well, they let them do it in this 1968 movie. Why won't you let me do it?
Just looks like my hair follicles.
This actor here, his name is something Hughes, I want to say. Again, I'm going to double check here.
It's Dr. Andrew Hughes.
Andrew Hughes, yep, plays Dr. Stevenson. He's in one of my favorite films, The Golden Bat.
Gambato.
Yeah, you see him a couple times in some of these kaiju films. I'm trying to remember if he was in Terror Beneath the Sea as well with Sonny Chiba. I don't remember if he was or not, but I love him in Golden Bat.
There is a Wikipedia page of his here. What'd you say what the one movie was?
I want to say it was maybe Terror Beneath the Sea, but I'm not sure.
And when was that made?
Gosh, like late 60s, I want to say. It's got oh shoot, what's her name from X from Outer Space who was at the recent G Fest? Oh, what's that
Well,
gal's name?
there's the Battle of the Japan Sea, uh, Latitude Zero,
Yeah, Latitude Zero.
New Zealand no Wakadai Show, the Big Explosion, Nippon Ichi no Yorigiri Otako, oh, Otoko, and then of course Destroyer Monsters, and then before that Booted Babe, Busted Boss. Yeah, I'm not seeing the Tear Beneath the Sea, but
Okay,
he's in
yeah.
Battle in Outer Space. And then the final movie that he was in was Sayonara Jupiter.
I have yet to see that one.
He was also in Tora Tora Tora. And then Submersion of Japan.
I have that one, but it's been a couple of years since I've
Yeah,
seen that one.
apparently he plays as the Prime Minister of Australia in that movie.
I will say some of the composite shots in this movie are very good. Like I haven't paid as careful attention to them on Blu-ray, but I've noticed a couple times already, like earlier when they initially saw the flying saucer on the moon, I didn't realize that the control panel that was kind of shown off to the side near what was supposed to be the ship's window, that was like a matte painting.
Well, and then and
Um,
then
I
and
didn't
then when they
realize
were in
that.
the before they showed the whole control room there, like they showed the kind of the entire Tokyo, and then they go uh, sort of screen over to a building that was all matte paint.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and I noticed too, like there was a building in which they showed like a radio tower, I believe
Hmm.
it was, and that was a painting
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, even though that, as you mentioned earlier, with this being a having a much significant bankroll compared to the two other films, you would think that they would probably have more or less these map paintings if they wanted to show some of these things, but it seems like
Well,
it doesn't quite look like it.
well, no, I mean the budget was bigger than the other two films, but it still wasn't as big as, let's say, Mothra versus Godzilla, even. So, you
And then
know,
you can obviously see right here lots of blue screen or matte screen here.
composite shots, yeah. I mean, the miniature work, I mean, look at this here, like with the monorail and all that, and kind of near the bay and all that. The models are still really
Hmm.
good. Some of the cars are unconvincing, especially given the fact that, um, from a realistic representation of traffic, it's just kind of throws you off a brief bit,
Right.
but it's not a big deal.
Why aren't the buildings exploding yet?
Plot hole. So yeah, like the kaiju that get their moments in this movie, obviously Godzilla does, King Ghidorah does, Rodan a bit too, so does Mothra, Gorosaurus near the end does. Um, a few of them get their moments, but by and large, most of the kaiju just get real bit parts here, which is unfortunate,
mainly
but
side,
it is what
mainly
it is.
sideline, because you can obviously tell about that when we get to the final battle.
Yeah. What I love here, I love the fact Manda does get a brief bit here, and I love how they were able to somehow get that puppet to twist around, and I don't personally see any wires even with this Blu-ray, and how they were able to do that without getting wires or whatever they used, caught up in the model work there. I don't know, but it's just that is amazing.
And
And
in the one brief second that I noticed in one of the shots when right after Manda coiled himself around that monorail track, that they reused like briefly in one shot the old Godzilla suit that was in Godzilla versus the Sea Monster there.
I would argue this particular sequence is not only the most entertaining, but the most impressive sequence of the entire film. Because you have these decent sized stages with these wonderfully built models. And some of them are good size. Some of them are the size of Godzilla, if not even a bit taller. It's very impressive. I think it's more impressive than the final battle.
Well, and then when you think about it too, being maybe just as tall or possibly taller than Godzilla, the one thing that you should also think about that those buildings are much taller than Nakajima himself,
Yeah.
and possibly some of the other people that have worked on this. Boy, if I had the chance and stuff, like roaming around those uh, sized, like modeled cities and everything, just going through it, that would be so much fun.
The only thing that I really don't like about this sequence, and this happens in quite a few kaiju movies, but it happens an awful lot here, is the self-defense force is lousy. I mean, look at how very few of these shots even hit their mark.
Well, isn't it like that almost every time in every
Yeah,
movie?
but it just seems like it's worse in this movie. I do love the fact Manda is involved. It's great to see a very minor kaiju get a bit part. And here in the forefront, the guy with his back completely turned towards us, that is Haruo Nakajima. Right there, he turned around, he's partially bald in the front there. That's Haruo Nakajima.
Oh yeah. I also liked
It's
how
amazing she never gets crushed.
yeah. I also like how they have Mothra come out from the building there like that.
It's unique, but my problem with some of these models, and this is a big thing with a lot of the earlier Godzilla movies, is I never felt like, with some exceptions, uh, I thought most of the miniatures, when they fell, never seemed realistic. They looked more like models than buildings because a lot of them were hollow.
Mm-hmm. You know, earlier on didn't look like that there was much damage, but then after showing this whole aftermath thing, it's just
See
devastating.
what happens when you close Burger King early? The monsters get mad.
For me, it's whenever Popeyes is closed.
That explains all the chaos where you're at. I remember you calling me up the other day and you go, love that chicken from Popeyes.
Or maybe a little bit of Raising Cane's.
It's-
But yeah, speaking of Burger King, I got one right next door.
I'm actually getting hungry for Burger King. I try to stay away from meats. We try most of the time we eat vegetarian type of meals, but once in a while we'll have like meat type of dinners too.
I actually do like the Impossible Whopper that they have.
Impossible stuff is good.
Although I did try this one, was it Beyond Meats
Oh yeah.
thing. They was it Target and Cub carries those, and after a while it's like it doesn't. It's like, I don't know. There's something that sort of overpowers it to where it's like, it just sort of turns you off a little bit. Whereas when
I
it comes to the Impossible patties and all that, it doesn't do that to me.
I forget who makes them, but we get them every once in a while. Type of veggie burgers. They're the spicy black bean burgers.
Boca, is that the one you're talking about?
I don't think that's the one. I forget who made them. They're kind of in white and green packaging.
Oh,
Uh,
I know what you're talking
but
about. Yeah.
those things are delicious. I eat those plain
Mm.
sometimes when we get those. Those are so good.
But but yeah, it's like for me when it comes to some of these certain vegetarian things, like when I'm in the mood, I'd probably do certain ones, but otherwise, like I just can't live without.
It's hard, but it's easier than you think. Like one of the dishes I made here a couple days ago, was it peanut butter noodles, Thai peanut butter noodles. Very good.
Mm. Oh,
And then
here comes the whole earring pulling,
drip, drip, drip.
and then she faints.
That'd be funny if like half the room did too. Oh, blood.
But yeah, the other day I went to the ramen noodle shop that's walking distance from me. Oh man, it was so good. It's like
I haven't had
those.
ramen in an awfully long time.
It was like the second time I went to that ramen shop. It's really good. It's like I did the crispy chicken. Oh,
We have a Noodles and Company, but we have yet to go there. I think because Iowa City put one in within the final year or two we lived there, and Michelle and I went there. I think once, and we weren't that impressed by it.
mm. I should probably check to see if you guys have any authentic ramen noodle shops over there.
I know, I can look it up right now. Let's see here. Ramen.
I can't
Noodle.
remember anything.
The poison gas. Well, let's say Noodles and Company. Let's see here. Sapporo Ramen and Noodle Bar on MAC Avenue. So that's kind of by campus. So there's that. Omai Sushi. Ramen noodles are not freshly made here, so apparently that person didn't like that. Well, that's a little bit off. Well, no, it's still by campus, I guess. So it looks like the only real good one that's relatively outside of Noodles and Company is the Sapporo Ramen and Noodle Bar, which is relatively close to campus. They have clips or pins that you unclip or unlatch. I know because I used to have earrings.
Yeah, through that little phase of yours. I can still remember that.
The only thing that sucked was like really having to like clean your ears and all that. And even then, like sometimes it didn't always work effectively. And I just kind of got tired of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, so they got some izakaya items there. Sobamen,
What are you
rice.
talking about?
The Sapporo ramen shop.
Oh,
They do rice, udon, cup rice. Yeah, they got some pretty decent stuff here. Yeah, we'll definitely have to check that out. So they only do
We got
takeout.
Godzilla against the rocket. It's a special rocket. I don't know, but it's just how it is. How come bullets and stuff don't hurt Godzilla and many of these other monsters? It's just is.
It's just the way it is.
I always imagine the kaiju in this scene to look like dogs or something, like digging holes. Because all you see is, like, you see their heads, not right now, pal, and, like, just a bunch of foliage being thrown.
Or sort of like I'm trying to expect King Kong to be in this, but no, it's not. Or Sanda or Gaia.
That would be great if they could have gotten the gargantuas, but those suits probably were busted.
When was that movie made?
See, again, like, even with the tanks and some of those at relatively close range, most of them are just... they couldn't hit the broad side of a 8,000-foot barn, these self-defense force guys.
Yeah. But yeah, as far as the gargantuas, when was that movie made again?
66.
So just about a couple of years before this movie.
A couple of years removed. Keep it quiet. I do like this Anguirus suit and everything here.
Let's play with this tank. Zoom, zoom.
Well, it's like Godzilla looks at Anguirus and Godzilla's like, you know what? That's a good idea. I will stomp on it. Stomp.
Let's play. Let's ride these like skates.
That'd be funny if you saw him in the next scene, Godzilla skating with tanks on his... He pulls an M11. Dun, 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 boom, boom.
And then now that I think about the helmets that they're wearing, it sort of reminds me like they're trying to put on these coffee cans, like cut out coffee can containers, like those metal ones.
You know, considering the times we live in right now, I would love to have something like that.
It'd be pretty awesome. Like, you could do
like,
that for next year, like the costume parade. Just make your own like astronaut suit from Destroy All Monsters.
I'm not that motivated, but like I have these.
I like how you just say it straight face.
Goggle glasses that I use when I go out sometimes, and you know, because of the mask and everything, like they get fogged up most of the time, even when I just breathe throughout my nose. And it's annoying. That's the one annoying thing about that.
Well, yeah, that also happens to me when I wear those masks. They do like woodwork and all the other stuff. It's like there'll be a certain time, like when I put those masks on, like the air will seep through, like through where the nostrils are, and right up to my glasses there and fog them up.
When I worked for the university like 6+ years ago, we had to wear gowns and hairnets and masks. And I used to wear my glasses initially all the time. Well, I ended up having some of those same issues. Well, on top of that, we were dealing with bedding for the animals, and a lot of it was, you know, kind of like smashed up mulch or paper. Well, it created a lot of dust, and so not only were my glasses fogging up, but I was getting all this dust and junk on my glasses from the bedding. So I just said, the heck with it.
You know, this
made things better.
This scene right here, it sort of reminds me of Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, the 1991 movie. in a
Oh,
way. Like, with the army and everything, and then the Godzilla source where they go back in time.
oh,
It sort of
yeah.
reminds me of that, but it's the like the whole Japanese self defense force, not the U.S. military.
Well, with this particular shot here, we get sort of our first low angle shots involving not just Godzilla, but kaiju in general for the first time in a while in this series.
Hmm.
It's just too bad that we didn't get more of those shots throughout the series. You got them quite a bit in The Return of Godzilla, and I think even occasionally in Biollante, but then kind of after that,
Well,
not so much.
and Godzilla vs King Ghidorah too with
Well, yeah, that's
Godzilla
what I'm
source.
saying,
Yeah.
not so much after kind of Biollante. You know Biollante.
No, no, I don't.
Then why are you on this podcast?
Then why you asked me to be on it?
Touche.
Yeah. Yeah, see how strong you are pushing that rock.
That'd be funny if Akira Kubo goes, I dare you to punch that rock and see. And so then they start having a wager and they're like, I got 5 that says he can't. I got 3 that says I can. And I've got 2 that says, no, you can't. Oh, yeah? Ready? And oh! Start having a wager. And he pulls his hand away and like you see part of the bone jutting out of his knuckles. And he's just like, oh!
But yeah, like 5, 3, and $2. Like I would probably wager more than that.
It depends on what you got because guess what? It's a monster apocalypse, which I guess is pretty.
I probably would say I would wager you Fort Knox.
You have to give me Fort Knox. Well, I'm not the government, so I can't give it to you. What? That one gal just to the left doesn't look
Yeah.
to be. Doesn't look all that thrilled to
I
be
was
there.
I was thinking the same things. Like she looks pissed, like she doesn't want to be there right now.
I always thought this sequence here that we're about to see with one of the Keylog saucers coming up and then going out that tunnel, how marvelous in execution that is, where they use wires and a winch to get that thing to rise and then they go out that tunnel. I mean, it's amazing. Okay, so that's weird. They brought up 3 saucers and then 2 go back down. Explain that to me when they only needed the 1.
I don't
I just
know.
realized that for the first time after how many times I've seen this movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
That'd be funny if Kubo goes, tell me, you only needed 1 saucer, yet you lifted 3 up and then you lowered the other 2. Why? Shut up, you.
It's like, why is that even a question to ask? Because that was the first thing that came to my mind.
It seems like a waste of time and energy, ma'am. What will die? Well, you are part of the self-defense force, so you understand the hazards of the job. One's in a clamshell. I didn't realize that before. That's a big clamshell. Pretty clean one, too.
Yeah, one day I was trying to eat some oysters from this big ass clam, but all I got was just a fuck big ass BB sized receiver.
I've wondered, you look at it, if you got some crazy person who found that, Wouldn't they think it was a pearl and then they wouldn't want to give it? No, I'm keeping this, sir. That's a radio transmitter that controls a monster. Give it to us before the monster. No, it's a pearl. I do like this set here with the moon base and everything. It's pretty cool. It's too bad Sahara didn't have more of a prominent role here.
Yeah, like when he says "don't land," they'll ask, "Well, why not?" Because I said so, dumbass.
As your commanding officer, I'm telling you to shut up and do what I say. Another downside, or to this movie, unfortunately, is that there are a number of sequences that are um, elongated, I guess, that use up an awful lot of valuable time that could have been used for either monsters or something more dramatic. And the biggest offender in this movie, as I'm sure you are thinking what I'm thinking, is when they destroy that radio transmitter inside the
Oh
moon
yeah.
here in a few minutes.
To,
That whole sequence, I think, takes like 4 or 5 minutes.
to me, that part is not quite as annoying as the submarine scene in Latitude Zero.
Oh, well. The funny thing was, um, what was it, a couple weeks ago or whenever, when we were deciding what to do for this podcast, I thought to myself when I was going through the movies that we have yet to do commentaries on, I go, oh shit, Latitude Zero, I forgot about that movie. Like, it's been so long since I've seen that, and at the same time, part of me was going, at some point we got to do that one.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Kubo from that angle looks like he could even be bald under that helmet.
You're bald.
I almost looked like it here like a month and a half ago when I buzzed my head. But yeah, this whole sequence, unfortunately, just goes on longer than it should. You could have done it in a fraction of the time, and it probably would have packed more of a bigger punch.
But they just want to make it dramatic, okay?
It gets dull and boring. And again, part of the problem, sadly, with this film is just because of how it's written, it's not as dramatic in terms of raising the stakes as it should be.
Well, they are raising the stakes. That's why they're blowing fire at the spaceship here.
That'd be funny if they rolled down their windows and they're like, all right, here's some marshmallows, here's some kebabs, here's a New York strip.
Well, and then one guy's just bringing out his Nathan hot dogs. I would say the temperature would be much more than that.
And similar to Monster Zero, the aliens have a particular weakness. In Monster Zero, obviously, it was a high-pitched sound. Here, it's cold temperatures for the key locks.
It would have been funny that the bridge there from the spaceship wasn't going down all the way, and then they went off and then went all the way down, all the way down to the base.
Either that, or like they got confused how they landed the ship, and it was up against a wall, and then the door like smacks up against the wall of the cavern, and like, oh no.
Be like, well, this mission is all fucked. Not so smug now, eh?
It's a laser. It's a laser. They're trying to blow stuff up.
Well, I was talking about the Keylocks. They're like, they were just.
Well, I'm not answering Lincoln's
Oh, okay.
question. Well, no, I was talking about. I'm not even talking to you.
Well, I'm not talking to you right now. I like the face expression of the one gal that was to the left of one of the Keylocks, where she was like just looks like this as she was going down.
That would have been funny, like if she did that and then just like her head blew up or something, popped like a balloon. Hello, DoorDash.
This is Postmates.
Damn, it's for you. I gotta check on DoorDash, see where my food is.
Let's get out. I gotta take a piss.
It's so funny because a couple of times when I watch the sequence, I realize, oh crap, like there's a movie going on here. Like I tend to zone out a decent block of this sequence a lot of times because it just goes on and on. It's not handled as well as it should be or as expeditiously as it should.
It's also kind of funny how it just goes from colorful when you see that shot there, and all of a sudden just turns into this grayish, coldish look.
It's like those Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck episodes where, either Elmer Fudd or Bugs, they're the artists and they're drawing and erasing stuff, harassing the other character. Well, I lost that bet. It makes you wonder.
It's big ass.
I would
It's
like.
big ass sperm.
How can they have some sort of advanced civilization when they're worms part of the time?
Who knows? It's just the way it is, Kent.
I know. I'm thinking too much about it, and that's the problem.
Yeah, stop overthinking things.
No.
Do I have to pick these up? It looks like poo. Gold-lathed poo.
That's some weak defenses that they got around that transmitter.
Well, you would have thought it would have gotten busted by all the rocks falling on top of it there.
It probably should have. And checking my bingo card, and bingo. Yes, we are all doomed, just got covered.
Damn. My nail filers aren't working.
Man, those must be some intense nails you got if you're using something like that. This whole sequence, like if you're talking about the moment that they start landing, like they start their descent into the cavern, and all the way up until the point this transmitter is detached. I mean, this has to be like 10 or so minutes of very slow action, if you want to call it that. But the thing is about action, it needs to be action.
Heave ho, heave ho, heave ho. Let's bring down the giant.
See, even my son's going, "Where's the fight?" He's he's getting impatient. He's seen this movie numerous times. One of his favorites, right? That and the new King of the Monsters.
How many times has he seen this one?
Seen this
Yeah.
one? Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 times at least.
Jeez.
That's when we started doing the whole, like, let's go through and watch at least every single kaiju movie once so you get exposed to something other than those two movies. Because if he had it his way, I mean, he would watch a few of the other ones, but it would mainly be this one and the new King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
It's overheating. There's just too much energy going through something that isn't built to withstand that amount of energy. Like Daddy's one iPod, it was overheating in his pants and just about leaked all over. And I'm not joking. I am not joking. My one iPod that I've had for a year started overheating. Why, I don't know.
Overloading with excitement.
Giggity. In this movie, the end. No. No. I like that sequence we saw earlier in Tokyo. Which part is your favorite, Dad? No, it's when it's over. That's Shin Godzilla. I should have timed this. It had to have been like 10 minutes from the moment they started their descent to now. That one guy, I swear, got shot earlier. Why is he there?
Which one?
He was a brunette guy. He was
Boy,
like
that was
second or
really
third.
specific.
I swear he was part of that earlier gunfight on the island, and I swear he was one of the guys that got shot. Like, he was the guy that I think got shot in the abdomen. I could be wrong, but it looks impeccable like that one guy.
I'm just probably gonna assume that you're dead wrong.
I could be, like I said, I could be. But I'm just saying it looks very much like that one guy. That'd be funny if they checked that out and they realized, no, this isn't one of the key locks. It's just a generic moon rock.
But yeah,
That's why they aren't coming out. It's not even a key lock. It's a moon rock.
but yet they need thousands of degrees to be active again. Seems quite
Then
a lot.
explain this. How were some of those former Ogasawara Island employees able to withstand that intense heat? Plot hole.
And potentially live forever too. Bring out the macers. Don't bother me. I'm at a party.
Doctor, you idiot. There's a monster outside my window. Good, I put him there. Wait a minute, you traitor.
Let me ask you something there, son. Are you high? well, I'm drunk right now.
That's a Rocky statue. It'll experience something different. Loud kabooms.
And Sonic
I
Boom.
kind of like that shot of mixture of miniature and matte painting. Those missiles there always remind me of those badminton
Oh
birds.
yeah. Now this sort of reminds me of I don't know, for those of you who have watched Dragon Ball Z, it sort of reminds me of the whole Cell saga with the Cell games, where they had like the cameraman and announcer out in this like plot of land, like out in the middle of nowhere.
That's how all those Dragon Ball Z ones are, though. I remember the Frieza ones. It's out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, this is animation. Like, you can have it in a
Well,
metropolis.
they were on a different planet for that entire battle.
A very goofy Manda marionette. There's the Varan marionette. See, there's the one brunette guy there. Second one.
I don't even remember him from the earlier parts.
Mortal Kombat! Dun 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 dun.
Whatever.
I'm sorry, but I can't take Ghidorah seriously. Again, we've talked about this numerous times on this podcast where it's just like, man, sure, Ghidorah can take a beating, but this guy, if he was by himself, like if you didn't have another monster to help protect the Earth, sure. I mean, like, it's dangerous and all that. But when you got Godzilla, it's like, dude, Ghidorah's nothing.
Although when it comes to the 2019 Ghidorah, I'd say
That's
it's
different,
different.
yeah.
I'd say he's much more formidable.
Goofy grin there. See, why isn't he shooting off his lightning right now? He's got the higher ground.
Don't know.
There's your mistake. You landed. You imitating the fight? He's got his toys and stuff on the floor. He's imitating the battle.
Not surprised.
My guy, what is that? You keep breaking those.
Why's he breaking?
Like pieces of those exploding buildings from that New York set you
Oh
gave him.
yeah.
I don't know how many of those he keeps giving me, like every time he plays with that set. It's like, dude, like Jason had this set for like 20 years and he never broke a piece. And you've only had it for like a year and you've broken like just about the entire set.
Well, the one thing that was already broke was the atomic ray launcher from Godzilla.
Oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, that goes without saying.
Yeah. It's an opal.
That's what I always thought too.
Seriously, that has to hurt. It's like Angerus shouldn't be down and out from that.
Ghidra should have been like, ouch,
Yeah.
ouchie. I don't know. That's a plot hole. That'd be funny. Then he just got blown up all of a sudden. I kind of don't like that guy. I really don't. It's just like, dude, why are you there? Like, well, it's newsworthy. People want to know. It's like, dude, you can get killed. All that what matters more is that the Keylocks are defeated.
Well, you still have that opal-like thing, still, which is part of Keylocks.
The Keylock secret weapon, fancy rocks. Doof. Why they didn't just like break up the neck, I don't know.
It's just the way it is, Kent.
It's kind of funny how Minya is the one that gets the final shot.
The
here.
final blow, yeah.
Like how he just throws the Ghidra head and it bounces back
Yeah.
up. He's like, damn it, stay down, and starts stomping on it again.
I also like how Gorosaurus is a part of this whole battle, basically from the get-go.
More or less like second in command here.
And there we go.
And
plop.
Finished. Smoke rings. Minya wins. Flawless victory.
Oh, that didn't do much. I also like how Mania just goes on top of Ghidorah there.
I remember when I first saw this, they were saying, oh, the fire dragon. And I'm like, oh, man, we get to see a new kaiju. And it's like, ugh, it's a flying saucer that just had an accident at a local barbecue. Poor Rodan. I feel like he gets picked on some level in this film.
Which I don't think is not much at all.
Quick hide, yeah, that's gonna save you. I mean, look at how much that island's blown up. Like, how did they survive that? We never see them come out of the rubble.
It can't.
So look at that. Like, virtually the entire island is gone.
It can't.
I know.
That's just the way it is.
You're thinking too much.
I like how that whole island is just now set ablaze.
And there's not a single piece of ash on it later at the end of the movie when they do their helicopter tour.
Nor any trees at all burnt to a crisp.
And speaking of ash, there's no single piece of ass on it either when they go back. Uh-oh.
It's like, oh no, I've been found out.
They found out the recipe to all the
That's
secret seasoning.
not so smug after all, eh?
After your lucky charms. Hearts, stars, horseshoes, clovers, and blue moons, pots of gold and rainbows, and the red balloons, plus a blue opal.
I liked how Godzilla's like after he tried to blow that
Face.
the whole panel up like a couple times and it wasn't going. It's like F this. The thing just goes over and smashes it.
You just take a look at his face and it's just like,
It's like, fuck it.
It's like that one American terrorist in Godzilla vs. Bylane. Son of a bitch. The first time ever King Ghidorah is destroyed.
He dead.
And this is supposed to be in 1999, yet Son of Godzilla was held in 1967. Minya has really not grown in 30 years. They became worms. They go into an indefinite period of hibernation. What? Just, they're cold. They just are in hibernation. Oh. Puppy dog. This particular sequence tends to go on a little bit longer than it should too, with the rocket and the spaceship.
Yeah, talk about the sequence from earlier.
This is ever so slightly more exciting, but at the same time it's nowhere near as long as trying to knock off that transmitter. Counting down. What? The missile's gonna blow up and we can't launch it? Oh no!
I like how you said that while with that sequence there.
Just a coinky dink. What? What about it? Yeah, he died. Sank into the earth. He just gets buried. He's dead. I never once found this sequence all that interesting, although with the exception of the first time, because again, like I said, I thought this fire dragon was indeed like a brand new kaiju we were going to see here. And then turns out to be flying saucers. It's like, oh, well. No, duh.
Well, no shit, Sherlock.
If it was that easy, why didn't they do it earlier when on the moon? You know what? Again, I'm thinking too much again.
Kemp. Hey, Kemp.
I know.
You're thinking too much.
And then somehow the good doctor gets out from the wreckage of Ogasawara Island and takes our two lovebirds on a helicopter ride over Monster Island. After several more explosions here.
Yeah.
This is kind of one of the, I don't want to say whiplash inducing because I don't think it's that jarring, but it's one of those endings that just doesn't seem to have a natural transition.
And see, look, vegetation hasn't been burnt to a crisp.
And Baragon. Looking pretty good despite the fact it gets decapitated almost every time it's on Ultraman.
Well, this was made before the whole Ultraman series.
No, Ultraman started in 66.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, hey, you watch more Ultraman than I do, like, and I even knew that. And as we trail off, we say goodbye.
And
Destroy monsters.
that is it.
Alright, so hit stop on the Blu-ray player there. Alright, so kind of like with a lot of these commentaries, it's kind of funny how time flies. That felt like it was 40 minutes instead of 90 minutes, but again, it's an interesting film. I'm more into why so many people love this film so much, more so than I am in the film itself for the most part. But it's an okay film. I don't think it has the excitement that many people say it has. But again, it's personal preference, personal opinion. Again, if I had seen this maybe when I was 8, when I first became a fan, or maybe even younger, I probably would have that nostalgia built into it to where this would be like one of my favorites. But as it stands, that's not the case. But even then, I think like I can understand on some level why people would enjoy it outside of nostalgia. And but on top of that, it's like I look at it and I'm just kind of saying it's all right. I mean,
Well,
I think a movie like Monster Zero is a better film, but
and the one thing too that a lot of people sort of complain about, and I know we mentioned about this before, is that uh, like when it comes to some of these kaiju films, like if there's something that doesn't have a whole lot of monster action, it's just majority of it is just the human, like the human story, basically. Whereas this one is just majority of that is just the human story and just a little bit of the monster action in it. And
not this one.
well,
There's some decent human action, yes, but this has more kaiju action in it than a film like Monster Zero.
for me, I would say more of the monster action is probably towards the end. And then you maybe
Well,
get a
yeah, I
little
mean,
bit of like just the city part, which only lasts for maybe around 5 minutes or so, but that's
it's still decent.
still about it. But if we probably timed this, I probably guarantee you probably it could be maybe around 10, 15 minutes of the movie.
Well, here, let me, because I had Godzilla screen time. I've done this before. Let's see. Screen time of monsters in Toho films. Here we go. Godzilla franchise. This is from October 1st of 2017, so it's not going to reflect a couple of the newer films. So Mechagodzilla 2 is at the top with almost 27 minutes. Let's see. Let's find Destroy All Monsters here. Oh, come on. I don't know why this thing, every time it loads, it just kind of... Invasion of Astro Monsters, 5 minutes, 43 seconds. Where is it? Destroy All Monsters, 8:29, but let's see. Oh, that's Godzilla screen time. It's not Kaiju screen time. But anyways, yeah, I mean, there's a fair amount of kaiju action, but as we talked about earlier, like with the whole moon landing sequence and what have you, um, there are a number of times throughout the film in which, sadly, I just think there's a lot of wasted time that should have been used more for kaiju action, if not the fleshing out of the human characters and/or the story as well. Again, as it stands, it's an okay film, but I just don't see this film being as awesome as so many others do. It's an okay film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I were to create a list ranking my favorite to least favorite, this would land somewhere in the middle.
I would probably say the same thing too. It's a good film, but not like a really great, fantastic film. I do like the miniatures though, like in that whole Tokyo
The sets are
scene.
good. Yeah.
Like some of the monsters in there, I would say the selection that they had in there is pretty good, but I wish they would have actually, you know, taken the advantage to use them more and probably prolong the battle, like I mentioned during our commentary, that they should have let King Ghidorah just kind of show like sort of his full-on power for a bit, like just overpower a lot of the monsters that were in this whole thing, and then just like slowly and gradually that they dominate Ghidorah and then defeat him and as such. But yeah, the human characters, yeah, I can see a little bit of the one-sidedness or the one-dimensional here and there. But I would say some of the selections that they had as far as who portrayed these characters, I think it's good for the kind of movie that they were going with this. Wish they would have had Takarada in this, but I'm guessing he was doing something else at the time. But yeah, it's a good film. Not great, not bad, just sort of in the middle.
Yeah, it's an okay film. It more or less does what it set out to do, to a point.
Right.
And so with that, we thank you so much for joining us for our commentary on Destroy All Monsters.
And with that, I know you wanted to talk about like something separate right after this. I think what I'll probably do is make a separate thing from this. Probably take me maybe about 10 or so minutes to get everything set up for that. But before we go, the one thing that I want to say is if you haven't subscribed to us yet, or if you want to know where we stream, like both video-wise like this and audio-wise, you can find us at these following podcasts and streaming networks. As far as the podcasts, we're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and TuneIn. And then as far as the streaming networks, YouTube, obviously, Twitch, DLive, and Periscope. And
by the way, are you up to date on the podcast portion?
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
And And as far as social media, you can follow us at these following social media websites. Just search for Daikaiju Network, and we also have a our own website, which you can find us over at daikaijunetwork.com. And so with that, yeah, thanks for watching us, and we'll probably be
Or listening.
Yep, and we'll be right back in about a few minutes here via through YouTube and like some of the other streaming networks via live here. So just kind of just make a little special announcement in a bit. So we'll catch you guys in a few minutes.